The New York Rangers will not be interviewing Patrick Waugh regarding their head coaching vacancy. So who is the favorite to be the next head coach of the New York Rangers? Is it Peter Laviolette, John Hynes, Chris Knobloch, perhaps even a mystery candidate? All this and much, much more on today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers.
You're Locked On the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to episode number 844 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL. And when you enter promo code LockedOnNHL, they will throw in a free custom Birddogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. And of course, Locked On New York Rangers is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So let's go ahead, jump right into it here. In our most recent episode, I threw out the idea and kind of shared with you guys that I was planning on talking about Patrick Waugh and his candidacy to be the next head coach of the New York Rangers. And the reason I wanted to do this is he's really the only big name coach out there that's really been connected to the Rangers at all. It's kind of been maybe a little bit more fan created than anything else, but certainly not completely out of the realm of possibility that Patrick Waugh could end up as the coach of this team. But some 24 hours later, we find out, I believe Molly Walker had the story that the Rangers, in fact, will not be interviewing Patrick Waugh for their head coaching vacancy. And want to go ahead and just discuss him anyway and talk about, whether this was a good idea or not, or, just kind of share my thoughts on Patrick Waugh. And I'll let you guys be the judge of the entire situation, if he should have gotten a chance, or if the Rangers may be a little bit better off looking somewhere else. And Patrick Waugh, of course, I'm sure a lot of us probably remember him from his playing days. He's now 57 years old, if you can believe that. But Waugh, a Hall of Fame goalie, 4-time Stanley Cup champion, 2 with Montreal, 2 with Colorado. And as far as his playing days mattering as it pertains to his credentials as a head coach, it's not the end all be all, but I also wouldn't completely throw it in the garbage. Some people think that, what somebody did as a player will have absolutely zero bearing whatsoever on what they are capable of doing as a head coach. And so, I can kind of see where they're coming from a little bit, but, somebody that's won 4 Stanley Cups, obviously he's very competitive. Obviously he knows quite a bit about hockey, and, Patrick Waugh, one of the leaders on some of those teams that he played for. So I think it translates a little bit into the coaching world. But regardless, to kind of look at his coaching track record here, it's been an eventful one, to say the least. He has had 2 separate stints with the Quebec Remparts of the QMJHL and a single 3-year stint with the Colorado Avalanche. So we'll take it from the top here. We'll start with his first time around with the Quebec Remparts. He lasted for 8 seasons there. His first season with Quebec, first season as a head coach, as far as I can tell at any level, they lost in the QMJHL finals, but they did then win the Memorial Cup. And then going forward, he made it to the second round or deeper in all of the next 7 seasons. Did not win any championships, though, as head coach of the Remparts in his first time around there. So then goes to the Colorado Avalanche in 2013, 2014, spends 3 seasons there. His first season was awesome. They win the Central Division. They go 52, 22, and 8. But then they lose to the Minnesota Wild in the first round in 7 games. He also won the Jack Adams Award that season. His first game as the coach, he got into a huge shouting match with Bruce Boudreau, who at the time was coaching the Ducks. They were going back and forth. And you got that glass stanchion between the 2 benches. And Patrick Waugh is yelling at Boudreau and shoving the stanchion over, and almost did knock the entire thing over. Quite the scene there. Patrick Waugh, that's the thing about him. My understanding is that he can be a little bit of a loose cannon at times. And so, if the Rangers were going to look to hire him, they probably would be going with one of the ultimate boom or bust type candidates, because it's one of those things. It could just be outside the box enough to work. And, he has had success coaching in the QMJHL, but it could also end up as a complete disaster. So high ceiling and a low floor for Patrick Waugh as a head coach. And we'll see. I get the feeling sooner or later we will see him back in the NHL at some point. But then, everything kind of fell apart his last 2 seasons with the Avalanche. They finished 7th in the Central the following season. So from first place to last place. And they didn't finish 6th in the Central in what turned out to be his final season there. Missed the playoffs both years. In total, Wa's record with the Avalanche, 130 wins, 92 losses, 24 overtime losses. If we combine the regulation losses with the overtime losses, it's an overall record of 130 wins, 116 losses. He cited a lack of input in personnel decisions and stepped down as head coach of the Avalanche. Jared Bednar took over, and I guess you could say the rest is history. I mean, they've only got one Stanley Cup, but hey, it's one Stanley Cup. They all count, and obviously a tremendous accomplishment anytime you can pull that off. And we as Ranger fans would certainly know about that with, the team only winning one Stanley Cup in the last 83 years. I'll try to stop saying that as often as I've been saying it lately. I'm not trying to open up any wounds or anything, but facts are facts. And that's the kind of history we're dealing with as Ranger fans. But anyway, back to Waugh. After 2 years being away from being a head coach, Waugh goes back to the Quebec Remparts in 2018, 2019. He's been there the last 5 years, made the playoffs 4 years of those 5 years. And the only year that he didn't was the COVID year. Everything got canceled. There were no playoffs. And he's been to the second round or deeper with Quebec in all of the last 3 seasons. And of course, this past year, this just happened a couple of days ago. Waugh and the Remparts win the QMJHL championship. And then they go on to win the Memorial Cup as well. I mentioned this the other day, but it bears repeating because what a dominant run for Waugh and the Remparts in the QMJHL playoffs. So it's just like the Stanley Cup playoffs, 16 teams, every round is a best of 7. The Remparts in the playoffs that year, they sweep their first 3 opponents. So they go to the finals having not lost a single game in the playoffs. And then in the finals, they beat Halifax in 6 games to win the championship. So they went 16-2 in the playoffs. And then, of course, went on to win the Memorial Cup as well. And between his 2 different stints with Quebec, Waugh has coached 845 games. He has a record of 524, 255, and 66. Or if we combine all the losses, it's 524 and 321. Either way, a pretty awesome record there. And obviously roared with a couple of championships this past season here. And, Waugh, if they were going to interview him, I can't say that he would be at the top of my list. I'd be at least somewhat intrigued. Obviously, he's had some success in the QMJHL. And with the Rangers, a team that obviously is scuffled and can't seem to find a way to win championships. Again, there it is again. It does come up from time to time on here. It's one of those things. It's outside the box. It's one of those things where maybe it's just crazy enough to work. Going with Patrick Waugh, somebody that had kind of a tumultuous single tenure as a head coach in this league when he was coaching the Colorado Avalanche. But an outside the box idea to me for a team that's struggled as much as the Rangers have, over the last 83 years here. Not always the worst idea in the world. I think it's something that could have at least been considered. I think they could have, maybe just given him an interview. And I know a lot of people were speculating that maybe they were waiting for the Memorial Cup to be over so they could talk to Waugh, maybe make him their guy. Drury and Waugh have played together in the past as members of the Colorado Avalanche, won a Stanley Cup there together. So, there are some dots there that could be connected. But again, it sounds like Waugh will not be considered. But I just wanted to, bring this up and talk to you guys about it because, I wanted you to draw your own conclusions. Again, Patrick Waugh, his name was coming up a little bit, and I wanted to kind of give him a fair trial here, just like we did all the other big name coaching candidates. And I believe we've now done that. And again, you guys can draw your own conclusions. Let me know in the comments. Do you like Waugh? Do you not like Waugh? Would you have rolled the dice on him? Would you have at least given him an opportunity, to interview for the job? You guys can let me know. And we're going to keep everything rolling in just a second. I want to turn our attention to, it's not going to be Patrick Waugh, apparently. So who is going to be the next head coach of the New York Rangers? To me, there's 3 candidates that kind of stand out as the most likely names at this point. And for the everydayers, you guys might know the 3 that I'm talking about before I even disclose that. But we will get to that and talk about all 3 of the candidates and just kind of I'll share my thoughts on where everything stands and what might happen the next couple of days here, because the rumor is the Rangers are closer to naming a coach than they, I guess, have. Literally, yes, they are closer to naming a coach. But there was a tweet from Vince Mercogliano that said they could do it as soon as the upcoming week, possibly in the next 24 hours. So we have that to look forward to. But either way, we're going to discuss, these candidates one last time here as we close in on, the Rangers probably naming their next head coach. And again, we will do all that good stuff in just a second. But first, got to let everybody know, today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Birddogs. Birddogs make you look good. Birddogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Birddog shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of a stiff, restricting cotton. Birddogs fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice any movement. Birddogs use anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL and enter promo code LockedOnNHL for a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you. Once again, go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL and enter the promo code LockedOnNHL. All right, we just want to go ahead and thank everybody, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And so, yeah, it's not going to be Patrick Waugh. That naturally leads us into the next question, and a question that's been on all of our minds pretty much ever since Gerard Gallant got fired. Okay, who's going to take the reins? Who's going to lead the Rangers into, basically a new era of New York Ranger hockey? And, as I've said all along, I feel like Peter Laviolette has kind of been the favorite from the start of this whole thing. I feel like at this point, he probably still is the favorite. Again, if I'm going to rank them at this point, the most likely gentleman to take over as head coach of the New York Rangers, I'm going Laviolette number one. I'd say John Hynes, based on what was being said and the fact that, there's a connection between him and Drury and, just based on what's being written about the whole situation, it seems like there's a little bit of smoke to the fire with John Hynes. I'll put him at number two. And then Chris Knobloch, head coach of the Hartford Whalers. I will put him, Hartford Wolfpack, flashback to the Whalers there. I will put Chris Knobloch, though, at number three. Those are probably the top three candidates right now. That's, again, basically just based on what I'm reading from reputable Ranger reporters and also just kind of a gut feeling that I myself have. Again, I put Laviolette a little bit in the lead. And speaking of Laviolette, he has now interviewed with the team twice, still does not have the job. And there seems to be a growing belief that the Rangers, like Peter Laviolette, they don't exactly love him. That the Rangers are maybe even hoping that Mike Sullivan or Sheldon Keefe will get fired and they could pounce on that and try to bring one of them to New York. I mean, why they would want Keefe, I'm not really all that sure. I know that the Leafs have obviously been good the last handful of seasons, but they've really struggled in the playoffs. And, a lot of the complaints, without getting into too much detail and too much of a comparison here, but a lot of the complaints that the Gallant naysayers had, you could probably apply the same thing to Sheldon Keefe. And like I said, that team has really struggled in the playoffs. They finally beat the Lightning this past year in the first round. Then they turn around, losing 5 games to the Florida Panthers. And with Sullivan, I mean, obviously he's got a great track record, but I never thought for a second that he would be leaving Pittsburgh. And it seems more and more likely that he will be back there. So now you're basically left in a spot where you almost, if you're the Rangers, have to quote unquote settle for someone, possibly Laviolette, as the next head coach. I don't think Laviolette's a terrible choice. He's got a great track record, got a great win-loss record in the NHL, but there's something about it that's just a little bit of an underwhelming choice. Round and round we go on the NHL coaching carousel, right? It's just one stop after another for a lot of these coaches. They just kind of bounce from team to team. Peter Laviolette, if he comes to the Rangers, he'll be on his 6th team in the NHL. And again, he has had success, won a Stanley Cup, has been to the Cup Finals 3 times with 3 different teams. So it's not like he can't come in and, use his methods to lead the Rangers to some success. But there is part of me that would like to see the Rangers try a fresh face, a fresh voice, and just see what they can do, without diving back onto, like I said, the NHL coaching carousel. And if you're Peter Laviolette, I feel like we're getting to the point where this has to be getting a little bit awkward by now, right? He's done these interviews, and now I feel like after doing both these interviews, he's just kind of twisting in the wind, wondering if the Rangers are going to choose him, make him their guy. They interviewed him. I believe he was the first, or at least one of the first coaching candidates to be interviewed in the offseason. That was a couple of weeks ago at this point. Then he did a second interview, and again, still does not have the job. And if the Rangers end up hiring Laviolette, they'll say all the right things. They'll say, well, it's a very important decision. We wanted to give all these people a chance. There's a lot of great candidates out there. The one that they can always go to the well is, we want to do our due diligence. We'll probably get that from the Rangers as well, on and on with this stuff. But again, I just feel like if the Rangers were truly all in on Peter Laviolette, yes, this is the guy. This is exactly who we need. This is exactly what we need. His coaching methods are going to work. It's going to click. It's going to mesh with this group. We're going to win a Stanley Cup with Peter Laviolette. If they really, truly, in their bones, in their hearts of heart, felt that way, I feel like, once again, Peter Laviolette would already be here. And I also have to feel like Peter Laviolette, he probably senses that too. Again, he's kind of twisting in the wind right now. And look, if he ends up getting the job, hey, he gets the job, and I'm sure he'll be happy about it. And, away we go. It's the Peter Laviolette area of, New York Ranger hockey. But, I think the longer this drags out and they don't pick Laviolette, if they end up going with Laviolette anyway after all this time, a little bit awkward. And again, I'm sure everybody will get over it. They're all professionals. But again, I just feel like if the Rangers were truly, truly all in on Laviolette, he'd probably already be here by now. We'd already have the press conference, and we'd at least have some finality as it pertains to the Rangers search for a new head coach. To talk about John Hynes really quick here, I'm wondering, and this is something that I've been meaning to talk about in some episodes where we've discussed John Hynes. I'm wondering if he might be in a situation where he kind of needs to take a little bit of a step back from being a head coach back to being an assistant coach. We see this in sports all the time, whether it's hockey, baseball, football. A lot of times, if you're a head coach in one of these leagues and you have like one or two not so great head coaching stints in a row, a lot of times you're going to be naturally relegated back to being like in hockey, an assistant coach. In baseball, maybe you're like a bench coach or the third base coach. Football, you kind of get demoted, quote unquote, to offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator with your next position, wherever it might be at. And I'm wondering if that might be what happens with John Hynes here, because obviously it didn't go all that great in New Jersey, didn't go all that great in Nashville, and he might be in a spot where he has to, for his next coaching job, take an assistant coaching position. And I wonder if Peter Laviolette is the head coach, is John Hynes perhaps in contention to be one of the assistant coaches on his staff? I don't know what their relationship is, if they know each other, if they're fond of each other. Not really sure. I'd have to look that up, but it's food for thought, and it's definitely an idea. If Laviolette gets the job, maybe the Rangers look at John Hynes as somebody that could be an assistant coach. And speaking of potential assistant coaches, Kris Knoblauch. Now, I think he should be firmly in contention to be the next head coach of the New York Rangers. He's had success everywhere he's coached. He's climbed the coaching ranks. I think he's ready to give it a go in the NHL. But I also wonder, like, if somebody else is the head coach, does Knoblauch become considered for an assistant coach with the Rangers, or would he just stay with the Hartford Wolfpack? I'm not sure, but I will say I think Kris Knoblauch, even though I don't think he's going to get the job at this point, I would say where things stand right here, right now, he probably is my preference. It does carry some risk. Obviously, there's a lack of experience there, but again, Knoblauch has won in every level of hockey that he's coached, and he's very gradually, but very slowly but surely climbed the ranks here, and has gotten to be a head coach in the AHL, and there's just one stop left after that. So we'll see if that ends up happening. The other thing to consider here, though, is that if the Rangers do not give the job to Kris Knoblauch, then it's possible that this might be kind of a now or never situation for Kris Knoblauch and the Rangers. Like, if Knoblauch doesn't get hired to be the next head coach, he could be back with Hartford next season. But sooner or later, I got to believe this guy is going to get the chance to be a head coach in the NHL. And so if you're the Rangers, I mean, if you hire one of the other coaches and say the Rangers get knocked out in the first or second round this upcoming season, like, are you then going to fire the coach after one season and then be like, okay, now Kris Knoblauch, now come in? Like, what changed in a year? Why now are you sold on Kris Knoblauch that you weren't sold on him one season ago? So again, it just kind of has a little bit of a now or never feel as far as Kris Knoblauch potentially one day becoming the head coach of the New York Rangers. If they don't do it now, I get the feeling he's probably going to be on his way to being a head coach in the NHL somewhere else at one time or another, and preferably not in the Metro. We know how it goes with former players going up against the Rangers. They usually light them up. If Kris Knoblauch ends up in the Metro, he's going to start his career by going like 10-0 against the Rangers. That's just kind of how it goes. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to see them give Knoblauch a chance. I think he's earned it. And, Laviolette, I could live with Laviolette. Not the biggest John Hynes fan, but there is part of me that wants this organization to be bold, not just do the safe hire, the coach with the high ceiling kind of a thing. Let's roll the dice here and see if we can't find the next John Cooper, the next Jared Bednar, the next Rod Brindamore, guys who had not been head coaches before, give them their chance, and they have a lot of success. But we'll see how they look to go. Like I said, tweet from Vince Mercogliano earlier today indicated, and it's Tuesday for frame of reference here, but it indicated that the Rangers could be very close to picking their next head coach. So we'll obviously keep an eye on it. And yeah, just count down the minutes until the Rangers hire somebody. But we're going to keep everything rolling in just a second. I want to shift our attention to the NHL draft. I always have fun with this every season. We take a look at players that are maybe going to be there when the Rangers pick. The Rangers had the number 23 overall pick this season. So we're looking at guys that are going to be drafted around that range. And we're also looking for guys that have a style, a skill set that fits with the Rangers, something that they could use. And we're going to ID another possible pick for the Rangers at number 23. I mean, if you're watching on YouTube, we got these fun new graphics here. So you can already see, where is it? Over here. You can already see on the left side here who it's going to be. But for everybody else, I got you covered. We'll talk about it in just a second. Another prospect that I think the Rangers could potentially look to pick at number 23 this season. We're going to get to that in just a second. But first, I want to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs because right now, new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's keep everything rolling here. Shift gears a little bit, move away from the Ranger coaching staff, at least for a short time here at the end of today's episode. And let's point the draft spotlight firmly at Mr. Daniil But. He is a right winger, left winger, can play both positions, seems to have a lot of experience doing both. 18 years old, 6'5", 203 pounds. That alone should probably get your attention if you're a fan of this Ranger team, specifically a fan that's looking for them to add a little bit more size and a little bit more toughness. He can give you that. And this is an interesting one because he is a polarizing player and probably as polarizing of a player as there is in the NHL draft class this season. Over the past few months, everybody puts out their draft rankings and everybody does mock drafts and all this fun stuff. But scouts are really torn on him. They have him going anywhere from, maybe being a top 10 overall pick to perhaps not getting selected into, somewhere in the middle portions of the second round. So your guess is as good as mine if he's going to be there when the Rangers pick. I would lean toward he probably will be there. So we'll see how that whole thing shakes out. But, again, he does a lot of things that the Rangers need. I do think, though, reading his skill set, he's somebody that could benefit from some good coaching and some good developmental coaches. And as I say that, again, I get a little bit nervous because, the Rangers over the years, they don't exactly have a sparkling track record when it comes to developing their own homegrown forwards. I mean, there are some success stories. You look at Chris Kreider, Jesper Foss, he's no longer here, obviously, but he's turned out to be a good player. But then, you've got guys like Krasov and Anderson who, they probably should have never even been picked when they were picked. But, regardless, they didn't exactly benefit from the Rangers developmental system. And, then you've got guys that are kind of middle of the road. The jury's still out, pretty much the kid line, Hedel, Kako, and Lafreniere, hoping to get them to the next level for this upcoming season. But again, this is somebody that, the impression that I'm getting is that he's a little bit of a raw talent. And we're actually doing a mock draft on Locked On NHL right now. Basically, all the hosts are taking turns simulating the first round of the NHL draft. Everybody's kind of, picking their person, whoever they think they might want to pick on behalf of their team. And for a little bit of a spoiler here, Daniil But fell to me at number 23, and that's who I picked in the Locked On NHL mock draft. And we're going to have a whole episode where every host just talks for about a minute, discusses their selection, why they picked who they picked. Definitely looking forward to getting that episode out for you guys. But, again, with But, there's risk involved, but the upside for me was too great to ignore. And it's, again, the fact that the Rangers seem to need a player like this. I already mentioned the fact that he is 6'5", 203 pounds, one of the biggest forwards available in the draft this upcoming season. And again, full disclosure, I'm pretty much exclusively going off of what I hear and what I read from NHL scouts or just hockey scouts, really. I'm not a scout. I'll watch videos and I'll try to pick up on things like everybody else does. But I'm going by the things that the professional scouts are saying about these players. So as far as some positive things for But, apparently has great puck skills, very strong on the power play, has a heavy shot on his power play, due in part to his strength, due in part to just very good shooting mechanics. His acceleration is not the best, but it sounds like once he does get to full speed, he's actually pretty fast, especially for somebody as big as he is. So imagine, somebody who's 6'5". What did I say here? 6'5", 203 pounds, bearing in on you, after the puck is dumped in the offensive zone and, you're a defenseman and you're back there playing the puck and you got this guy 6'3" or 6'5", 203 pounds bearing down on you and about to deliver a check. That probably isn't a lot of fun for said defenseman. But as far as some weaknesses, skating ability, and that's not uncommon, again, for somebody of his frame. But from what I'm reading, it's not like a glaring weakness. It's just one of those things that maybe a little bit below average. And something else, physical player, but not as physical, I think, as some scouts would like to see from somebody that's got, the size that he has. And look, he's only 18 years old. He's still figuring out, who he is as a player, I'm sure. I would imagine that when you're 6'5", 203 pounds, sooner or later, you're going to start to use that to your advantage. And again, it sounds like he plays decently physical, just doesn't, throw his weight around the way that he's capable of doing, given his giant stature. So as far as his stats and what he's done, in his hockey career so far, 2021, 2022, But spent the season, his first season in the MHL, and he scored 17 goals and had 27 assists. So 44 points in just 49 games. That led all under 17 MHL players in goals, points, and in points per game. And then obviously sticks with them for another season here, plays in 32 MHL games this season, scores 18 goals and 32 assists along the way, and ends up being called up to the KHL squad and scores two professional goals, his first two professional goals in 15 games there. Only 2 points in 15 games with the KHL. But, again, he obviously is very young. And the KHL, that's a heck of a jump up from the MHL to the KHL. The KHL has a reputation of being a pretty tough league and not always all that friendly for some of the young players. It's hard for them to get going. And from what I understand, he didn't get a ton of ice time either. Again, that's kind of a byproduct of being 18 years old in the KHL. But just the fact that, he put up decent numbers in the MHL and got a taste of action in the KHL, to me, that's all encouraging. As far as where he's ranked, among scouts and people that are trying to figure out this draft class and who's going to go where and who's a sleeper and who's a boomer bust kind of player and all that good stuff. So he is ranked, I have 13 publications in front of me. He is ranked as high as number 15 by McKean's Hockey. He's also ranked as low as number 52 by Dobber Prospects. So that would play him late in the second round if he goes number 52. Of the 13 publications, only 2 have him ranked better than number 23. So that would bode well for the Rangers' chances of him potentially still being there. If he's a player that the Rangers are interested in, it sounds like there's a better chance than not that Daniil But will still be there. But all it takes is one team that really likes him because, again, this is a player that is very polarizing. So if you're picking like 10th, 11th, or 12th, and he's your guy, I wouldn't even bother with trying to trade back because he has a very unpredictable range of outcomes as far as when he's going to be drafted on draft night. So if he falls to you and it's considered a little bit of a reach, I say go out and get your guy anyway. Like I said, he is a very polarizing player. Going to be very, very curious to see when he gets drafted and how early or how late it is. And if he's there when the Rangers pick, if he would be, somebody that they would consider. I figure we can go ahead, leave you guys with a couple of scouting reports. Again, people that do this for a living and, what they're saying about Daniil But. We've got Corey Pronman from The Athletic. His shot is also a weapon, and his ability to both make and finish plays makes him a threat. He's not blazing quick, but he's a strong skater for his size who can get around the ice more than well enough to go with a decent compete level. We've also got Jake Janso from FC Hockey. His large stature and unique skill set make him an attractive winger, drawing attention with his ability to play with the puck off of the wall. He has nice outside in skill, allowing him to beat defenders inside and force his way to the net. And we do need more of that with the Rangers. Guys that just have that willpower, they're just going to drive right to the net and nothing's going to stop them. We also have a scouting report here from Jordan Harris of Dauber Prospects. If he's able to improve his leverage and be a more consistently hard player to play against, he could be an effective middle six winger who can score goals for his line, all while being a shooting threat on a power play unit. And then I'll leave you with one more here, Scott Wheeler of The Athletic. And this one to me is very encouraging. And I think you're going to see why in just a second. Scouts are drawn to him because of his size skill combo. And while he can look a little uncoordinated out there at times, that draw is real. He's excellent on the wall in puck protection and also has some outside in skill so that he can attack off of holds into the middle third. So, yeah, there's a lot to like here. And to just kind of wrap things up with my final thoughts here on Daniil But, again, I like the size and skill competition. You know, a year ago, we were trying to figure out who the Rangers were going to pick in the first round. And one of the players that we spotlighted, or this was 2 years ago, actually, but one of the players that we spotlighted was Brandon Othmann. And again, that size and skill combination, it's tantalizing. It's difficult to pass up. And Brandon Othmann looking like he's going to be a heck of a player in the NHL. So would the Rangers go with, a similar type player, somebody that, with But, I think his floor is a little bit lower than Brandon Othmann. Again, he is a little bit of a boomer bust prospect, but if you're feeling risky, if you're feeling chancy, you want to roll the dice a little bit, you want to gamble, you want to take a chance on somebody that even the scouts can't agree on, I think Daniil But is probably your guy. And again, if he falls all the way to 23, then I think the Rangers might look to pounce. Perhaps they should look to pounce. It's one thing to, pick him super early in the draft, and then you're really rolling the dice. But, if he's there at number 23 and a lot of other players that you like are maybe gone, then this might be worth the gamble, worth the risk for the New York Rangers. I figure we could pretty much call it there for today, though, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely make sure to give us a follow on Twitter as well at LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's at LO_NY_Rangers. Definitely make sure to subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel as well. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.